All right, go live. I clicked the button. Let's see how it messed with OBS. Somebody say something.
Okay.
All right, everything looks good in OBS.
Yay, we're live. Yeah, we're live.
All right, tell me if it sounds right on the live stream. Londoner, if you're there, tell us how we're messing up.
Yeah, it's good.
I have no idea what happened, but I reinstalled EndeavourOS and now I can actually do the global mute and unmute for the microphone.
Oh crap! I gotta go grab something.
So I managed to be on the show with something other than Debian.
I will be right back.
I was going to disrupt to Fedora 30 minutes before the show, but then I had some issues with the installation, and I tried to install it again, and I saw that instead of like choosing a fastest mirror, it was like going 1%.
Yeah. That's why I have
2%.
one box that I do all my crucial stuff on, and I don't change when I'm doing it unless I have to, like when I'm away.
Yeah, but I just decided to double down on GNOME and move to Fedora and try to not have any extensions and try to see if I can make do without any extensions, even with no system tray.
Yeah. Have you got Audacity set to record in mono, by the way?
Oh, thank you for telling me. It is now, so.
Because that'll just make the edit easier when you're doing it later. It'll just make everything
So question,
easier.
I still seem to be pretty quiet. If I open the preview control and go to input devices, there's my microphone and it says it's set to around 74%, which is
just
minus.
record yourself in Audacity for a couple of seconds. Just so start.
Yeah, I'm trying, and now when I'm talking, it's around -6 decibels.
Okay,
So it should be good.
Is it
But
maxing out at
you're nearer
-6?
the mic now, aren't you?
Well, now it goes a bit. It goes a bit past -6, and sometimes if I'm really loud, it might go near 0, but it doesn't really touch 0.
Yeah,
but
I don't have it that high anyway. As long as it's getting up to between 18 and 12, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, but right now if I'm just talking like this, it doesn't even touch -6.
No. What I'm saying is, I don't worry about it. If as long as it's getting up to between -18 and -12, it's fine. Because the edit will bring everyone level. As long as we can hear you talking, and they can hear you talking on the live stream, we're fine. Okay. Joe, should we?
Yes.
Should we go for Audacity?
Yep.
Everyone ready to do Audacity?
Ready.
3, 2, 1, 25 seconds of silence.
When do we start?
I'll count you in.
Okay.
To start the recording. 3, 2, 1, record. Good. Okay, we can do 3, 2, 1, 0. We all ready for 3, 2, 1, 0?
Yep.
3, 2, 1,
0.
Lovely.
Right.
We ready to spin?
I think so.
Okay. Eventually, I'm gonna have to get the music set up
Mm.
All right. Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. It's starting to get chilly, but I'm Joe.
From a very wet northwest of England, this is Tony.
Building hardware from source, I'm Norbert.
And for use as directed, I'm Josh.
This is episode 373. This is episode 373.5. Recorded on Sunday, the 31st of October. Happy Halloween. Livestream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. If you see something that you'd like to hear about, tell us. Send us email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post at the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram, Discord, Facebook, or post directly at mintcast.org. First up in the news, we have Raspberry Pi 02W. Xorg has something new. SUSE goes Edge. A new MX Linux. And Microsoft blunders. In security, an NPM library gets hijacked. Proton will not retain your data. Firefox implements GPC. And Black Friday scams abound. Then in our wanderings, I try my hand at TV repair. Norbert plays with Legos. Tony is shopping for a new PC. And Josh is a plumber. It's his turn. In our innards section, we're going to discuss the applications that we all use most often. And finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions.
Hi Joe, just before we go on to the news, Londoners says the audio's dropped the volume's dropped quite significantly in the live stream.
My audio or all audio?
He just said volume just dropped significantly.
Well, it looks the same on my end. Hold on, let me take a look here. Okay, I'm not seeing any difference on the live stream. It says excellent connection. Look here. My volume's good. Okay, I'm not seeing any difference on the live stream. It says excellent connection. Look here. My volume's good. Getting echo from my audio stream out when I test the audio on the live stream. It seems fine.
Okay.
Can you test? Right. Can somebody else test the live stream real quick?
Joey's okay. Tony is audible but low. I'll turn my mic up a little bit.
Yeah, you sound fine to me, but
yeah.
I've even got my volume turned down in comparison to everybody else's.
I think Joe, you should try to turn your desktop audio up, because if everyone sounds fine for you, then
Joe's fine.
It must be something at your end.
Okay. Shall we carry on? So, This week in the news. So, as Joe said, Raspberry Pi Foundation have released a new Pi 02W this week. So, if you're familiar with the Raspberry Pi 0W, this one, instead of having a single core processor, has got a quad-core processor. So we put a link to Explaining Computers video in the show notes if anyone wants to go and take a look at it.
Yeah. I like this guy. Moss likes this guy too. Another thing to mention about the Raspberry Pi 02W is that it will only have 512 meg of RAM because of the faster RAM. It's much more difficult to stack it the way you would with the other one.
Yeah. And also, I think it's a price point thing. You know, if you start adding more RAM, then obviously you're starting pushing the price up, and they wanted to try and keep it around $15. So
which is mind-boggling for me. It's a 15.
Yeah.
It's a $15 PC. It is a PC because it's a personal computer. It can be a PC. And
Yeah.
it's $15.
If you watch that video, he actually did some testing using GIMP to edit video to edit a photo, and you know it was quite impressive. You know, the actual difference over the previous one. It's never going to be a desktop replacement. If you want to do that, use the Raspberry Pi 4. Raspberry Pi 4 or the Raspberry Pi 400, but I would suggest a Raspberry Pi 4 with 8 gig of RAM. That'd be a better option. But for making little games consoles and all sorts of other embedded use, this is going to be another cracking release from the Pi Foundation. And it's just made my 2001 predictions even more true. So we'll come to that at the end of the year. So shall we move on? So the next item is Xorg. 3.5 years after Xorg, the X.org server 1.20 was released, 1.21 is released. I'm not very au fait with how X and Xorg and all that work together, but if you want to read a bit about it, go to the link in the show notes to an article on the register, and they'll talk about it. But basically, it's to do with the X server and all that kind of stuff. It's what makes your pictures appear on your monitor.
Yeah, I think they've incorporated a variable refresh rate in this, so those with FreeSync monitors will reap the benefit of that.
Cool. Right. And our next article's about SUSE. It says here there's an article on ZNet. SUSE heads for edge computing with SUSE Linux Enterprise Micro 5.1. Does anyone understand this stuff? Because I'm not that au fait with it.
It looks to be mostly for cloud-based and Internet of Things devices from what I've read.
Right, okay. Anyway, there's a link in the show notes to that. Just for information, I actually have SUSE Tumbleweed running on a laptop that I use for, on occasions. And I've got it with SUSE Tumbleweed as the Linux install and Windows 10 as a print server for using my color laser printer because it won't work with Linux. But Tumbleweed's great. I love Tumbleweed.
I should give it another try because I've tried it before and it didn't really. I'm not sure why. I'm not even sure what's the word. I'm not even sure what the word is. It doesn't feel right because I've been using Fedora.
You don't feel comfortable with it?
No, I mean I guess it's part of it is just I didn't feel like learning a new package manager, and all the YAST stuff was weird because it's something that I wouldn't necessarily think I would want to touch. Because I've also heard that it's very different from basically all the other distros. But I also hear that Tumbleweed is very stable.
It is very stable. The thing you have to remember is that if you leave it more than a week or so to do your updates, it does effectively a dist upgrade every time you update. So you can end up, if you've got 2 or 3 weeks updates to do, you can end up downloading a gig of data before it'll do the update, and it can take quite a while. But if you're updating it on a daily basis, you should be all right. But anyway, so you put the next one in, Norbert, about MX Linux. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes, the latest version of MX Linux, MX21, based on Debian Bullseye, was released in the past week, and I just really think MX Linux is always worth a mention because it's one of my favorite. I mean, okay, let me rephrase that. It is one of the best. No, sorry. because it's one of the best Debian-based distros in my opinion. And if someone wants to stick with a Debian base but doesn't want to go with with an Ubuntu base, MX Linux is basically Debian, but it sort of eliminates the issue of having outdated packages because they package a lot of stuff. For example, they package the latest version of Firefox as opposed to Debian, which only has the Firefox ESR version. They also package stuff like VirtualBox, which isn't in the Debian repos, and even Brave. And they also have a lot of tools. So basically, it feels like Debian, but more polished for day-to-day use. And there's also the fact that it doesn't have systemd, but I think it's sort of a bonus, and I don't really care about it not having systemd. But so the latest version, it now uses the Bullseye repos, and there's another interesting thing that stuck out to me. There's another interesting thing that caught my attention because it uses XFCE, and I really like XFCE. But one of my complaints with it is that by default you cannot have you cannot set the panel to by default you cannot pin open windows to the panel. So you can have those quick launcher icons, and you can have the list of open windows, but you cannot have the two as one, like in basically all other desktop environments. But this latest version of MX has, what are they called? Plugins. But this latest version of MX has a plugin called dock-like taskbar, which essentially is sort of like a dock, and it allows you to pin open applications. And I tried to install it on my Void installation on my desktop, and I failed multiple times because of some weird dependencies. But I do plan to try MX21 on my laptop, and I've also decided on some interesting theming stuff to try, which I might put in. Check this out. So all in all, it's a really nice release because Debian 11 itself is a really nice release, and it's basically Debian. It's I like to think of MX as Debian plus.
Yeah, I use it on my ThinkPad, my X220. It's nice and lightweight and runs really well. So definitely looking forward to upgrading it and giving it a spin. Or I suppose reinstalling. I don't think there's a clear upgrade path.
Yeah, the other thing about MX as well is that they release a 32-bit as well as a 64-bit version. So if you've got old hardware that still relies on 32-bit, then you've got an up-to-date Linux distro.
So, yeah, you can definitely feel the antics Linux involvement in it. I also want to correct myself. It's not true that it doesn't have systemd. It has systemd, but it doesn't boot with it by default, which is interesting. And I don't really know any other distro that does this.
Cool. Okay. So the next item, it's a Microsoft issue. Since the last show, Microsoft have done a naughty and then done a U-turn. They released the next version of .NET. I think it's .NET 6, but there was part of the implementation of .NET 6 that they didn't open source, and it caused a bit of a furore in the community, particularly obviously in the open source community. And within 48 or so hours, Microsoft decided that they'd caused too much ruckus and decided to repent and decided to completely open source the latest release of .NET. So there's a link in the show notes to an article about that.
Oh, Microsoft, what are we going to do with you?
I know. They keep dropping these blunders.
I know what we're going to do. We're going to have a Microsoft did an oopsie segment on each show because we already seem to have it anyway.
And just before we came on air, I was looking at YouTube, and I noticed one of the YouTubers, Linux YouTubers that I follow, had released a new video, and it was saying Microsoft is embracing Linux only to kill it.
We're
So
back to extend, embrace,
yeah, that was basically
extinguish.
the title.
I'm not sure if
So-
they would want to extinguish Linux because they run on Linux.
well, but yeah. So come on, Microsoft, get your act together when it comes to open source software, basically. So unless anyone else has got any news that isn't in the show notes,
Then
no,
it's time to move on to the security update.
it is.
Okay. And the first article in the security update, if you're using this hijacked NPM library anywhere in your software stack, read this. And we have a link in the show notes. Does anybody know about this? I have not had a chance to read through this.
Nope.
I haven't either.
Okay.
Sorry, I had me mic muted. I had a quick read of it yesterday when I put it in the notes, and basically the U.S. government Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has warned developers that the version of the UA-parser-JS, which is JavaScript library available via NPM, was infected with data stealing and cryptocurrency mining malware. So yeah, if you've got this on your system, you could end up helping someone else make a lot of money.
Okay. Now, the next article, Proton Mail celebrates Swiss court victory exempting it from telco data retention laws.
Well, I think we reported on the show a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure, but Proton Mail was getting some flack over. I think it was the last episode that Leo was on.
I do remember something about it.
Yeah, they released some
Data
data to the
retention.
courts because of a court order, and they were getting some flack on it. But apparently, the Swiss courts this week have said that internet-based companies are not telcos, basically. So they don't have to maintain the same level of data retention that telecommunication companies do. So it's a victory that they can actually legally in Switzerland not retain data.
Yeah, this is still a very country by country thing. So,
Yeah.
I mean, if one country requires them to retain data, then basically they're still going to retain all the data.
Well, I suppose it just depends where your servers are based. If your servers are based in Switzerland, then you'll follow Swiss law, won't you?
Well, it's more than just your servers. If you're doing business in the US or you're doing business in Ireland and they require you to have X amount of data, even if your servers are somewhere else, then you're still required to have that data, aren't you?
I wouldn't know the legal niceties of that. I suppose if you use a VPN and direct it to a Swiss server, then you'd be covered by Swiss law, wouldn't you?
I guess it would still be kind of a gray area because, Chinese companies that do business in the US still have to follow US law. So who knows?
Also,
Well,
basically,
I'm not a
everyone
lawyer,
wants
so
to
I don't know.
do business in the EU has to comply with GDPR and that sort of stuff.
Exactly. So while
Yeah,
this
well-
is a victory, it's still going to be somewhat dependent on other countries as well.
Yeah, it's that just shows you the thing about international communications, doesn't it? That you're tied up with more than one country's legal system.
Okay, and next up, Mozilla Firefox joins browsers implementing global privacy control. Does anybody know about this one?
I'm not sure, but I
Again,
would have expected them to be the first ones to implement something that's called global privacy control.
I know I read that Brave already has this implemented by default, and I think it's just basically saying that a company can't sell your data. It sends out a signal to that particular website. So I suppose it depends on if that company is going to adhere to that or not. But it doesn't hurt having it in there, in my opinion.
Yeah. Mozilla are actually saying that Firefox is calling itself the first major web browser to implement this. So it's saying the ones that have already got it are very small players.
Okay, what
So,
exactly is global privacy control? What does it implement? I mean, obviously, I know it's for global privacy, so that means across the whole application, I assume.
Yeah, it sends out to the website that you're visiting. It's telling them, it's sending a signal saying not to sell your data. So uh, to their partners, I'm assuming.
Oh, okay. So many websites
I'm
present cookie consent banners that let users opt out of tracking and having their data sold on a site-by-site basis. The difference here is that the user doesn't need to opt out on every site, which we think is a better solution. Okay, so it's opting you in automatically to not sell your data where it
Right.
can.
How's Brave not a major browser? It has
There's,
25 million users.
I think there's only like 4 major browsers. What's that?
yeah, I
Chrome.
think in the scheme of things, 25 million users is quite low when you when you're looking at the internet as globally.
And what does Brave use as a backend or as a base or is it Chromium?
Chromium, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a Chrome browser with some additions.
Yes, but so is Edge, and so is Opera. Is Opera Chromium based?
I thought
I
Opera
believe
was
so.
Firefox based, but I'm not sure.
I think them and also Vivaldi. It's Chromium.
So what would be the 4 major browsers? I would say Chrome and Firefox, but
Well, Edge, I would
but
imagine the class as a major brand, and I know it's
I-
now based on Chromium.
I was classifying it as a major, even though Chromium is the back end. That's a recent change, and
Yeah,
and Safari.
and Safari.
4?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think the only reason Firefox is really considered one of the major browsers anymore is because it's, legacy.
But it still has
Right.
around 200 million users.
Yeah.
I also just tried moving to Firefox yesterday, and I moved all my bookmarks and I tried to use it as a daily driver. Then I bumped into some issue with Google Drive and I wouldn't be able to download files. So then I had to install Chromium. But I'm trying to use it as my daily driver.
I don't try to use it as my daily driver. I know a lot of people on the show do. But I do use it as a backup, or if I need to do something that would normally require me to go and clear the cache on Chrome, it's a lot easier just to pop up Firefox for 20 minutes.
I was using Brave, but someone pointed out to me on Telegram, not the mintCast group, but they said that Brave receives security updates a few weeks later than Chrome. So by switching from Chrome to Brave, I actually took a step back in terms of security. I'm not sure how serious this is, but I still do like Brave.
Okay, and the next one, TA575, criminal group using Squid Game lures for Dritix malware. Who knows about this one? So there's a new malware, and it's based on Squid Game.
But isn't Squid Game a TV show?
Yes, it is on Netflix from South Korea. Extremely popular. No, I have not watched it yet.
So how is a malware based on a TV show?
Has sent emails pretending to be someone working on the show, urging people to download malicious attachments or fill out forms with sensitive information.
so it's basically phishing emails. So yeah, it's a bit. I suppose it's just a traditional thing. It's just using something different to get people's attention to try and click on a link.
Wouldn't they be called squidding emails though?
I like it.
Fair play.
So beware those Squid Game emails. And then Google fixes 2 high severity 0-day flaws in Chrome. This
Well,
is
I
the
put
third
this in.
set of 0-day patches for Chrome in 3 months. Go ahead, Tony.
I just thought it was, having to fix all these 0-day flaws that they suddenly find in a major browser like that just shows you how vulnerable we all are, for using these things.
Yeah.
And it just shows you how important running your security updates in whatever operating system you're running is.
And the
Because
Google.
I'm assuming now that they've announced it, they've already released the fixes.
Yeah, the Google fixes seem to be coming as quick as the Intel fixes were there for a while. Or the flaws, anyway. And then the next article, Fortinet warns of Black Friday scams involving PS5, Xboxes, and fake Amazon gift card generators that steal crypto.
This is another form of phishing, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. I think anything where you're getting things, particularly at this time of the year when you're buying a lot of stuff online, you can very easily get drawn into these kind of things.
Yeah. I think that's why it's getting mentioned in an article now, and they're expecting this to come up quite a bit with Black Friday on the way. Just the phishing in general type of thing. And I guess, mentioning how they're specifically targeting crypto wallet addresses for the gift cards and things like that. Basically, don't trust any email you get, ever. Never click a link in an email you get. Somebody
What
tells
really
you
annoys
there's
me
something going
is
on.
when-
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, what really annoys me is when you get an email from a company you deal with that is a legit email. It actually comes from them, and even they ask you to click on a link in an email rather than saying, please go to your account online and log in and search for this and go there. They ask you to click on an email link.
Well, even those, I don't click on the link. It's like I got a text message that was supposedly from Venmo the other day saying that someone had accessed my account in England or something like that. And so please click this link to verify the access or the $1,000 purchase. And no, I closed out of the email and then went to the Venmo website, logged in, and saw that no, the only accesses were from my phone and my desktop.
Yeah.
So that's really the only way to do it. And phishing happens all year round. It's just you need to be more aware of it at this time of year.
But like I say, it's just when you get a legitimate email off a legitimate company that you do business with, and instead of them telling you to go and log in online, they put a link in the email.
It's
and
for
then
convenience.
Totally ignore you when you complain about the practice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't trust those either. The simple answer is do not trust a link in an email.
No.
I've also seen a lot of these login verification emails and stuff having just a code that you can copy paste instead of putting a link in there in the email. So the actual companies themselves that are legitimate seem to be moving away from the links altogether, at least the bigger ones.
Yeah.
And that is it for our security update. On to the bi-weekly wanderings. And first up, I tried to fix a TV. I ordered a used. First of all, I got the TV for free on one of the Facebook. It wasn't Marketplace. It was one of the Facebook groups that we have for give and take. So someone had a TV that wasn't working, and I was able to get it. It was like a 32 inch. I would never actually use it for anything. I just wanted to see if I could fix it. So I ordered a used, supposed to be good, supposed to be fully tested by a certified technician power board from eBay because I wanted to test the power board before I went through all the work with the replacing the LEDs behind the screen. Because the issue was that if you did the light test, you could see a picture on the screen, but the backlight was not coming on. So that's one of two things, either the power board or the LED strip itself. So that new board that was certified to be good was worse off than my original power board. It had a blown fuse, a bad AC to DC inverter. The large caps on it, the 120 volt caps, were blown. I replaced all of those from the old power board because I wanted to see if I could do it. And I was able to get power back into the caps, but something else popped as soon as I turned it on. So I still don't know what the issue was there. Took it back apart, looked, and didn't see any damage on the board. And I made that sound so quick when I was doing it, but believe me, replacing those caps is a thrilling experience. I don't know if you've ever drained a cap, but yeah.
No, I don't do electronics, Joe.
Well, I usually don't mess with caps because I know what can happen, but and I don't have the proper tools for draining. So a nice rubber handled screwdriver was about all I could do, and there's an exciting zap when you drain those things.
Shocking.
Yeah. So I didn't see any damage on the board after I took it back apart. So I put it back together and this TV would turn on, but still no backlight, but no picture either that time. I think I would need a different power board again and possibly the LED strip still replaced. So I'm right back where I started again right in the beginning. And it cost me $15 for the power board, but you can see how well that turned out. And it's probably not worth the money cost to fix at this point, but considering I wasn't actually planning on using it anyway, I don't know if I want to continue or not. It was very involved getting that power supply working, and also very fun. So maybe I just need to convince the wife to let me spend the $50 it would cost to try and repair that again. And I don't know if I'd succeed and anything like that. It's just, worth it to me to mess around and give it a try. I've also been doing a lot of messing around with cryptocurrency, and that has actually been pretty fun. Now, Shiba Inu price has been interesting over the past couple of weeks, and I was lucky to get a bunch of it right before the first price hike. I don't expect to get like retirement money out of it or anything, and with as volatile as the market is, I don't really expect to keep what I've gotten so far. I mean, at one point, my Shiba Inu all by itself was worth like $1,600, and then now it's like worth 900 maybe. So, but that's still a lot more than I initially put into it. But the way the crypto market is, you can't really count on it. I do expect crypto to stick around in one form or another and to have some kind of market domination. I mean, I don't expect most paychecks to come across that way anytime soon, but I know some places do pay using some form of crypto. I also installed a program to act as a ticker and alert device called Coin Price Indicator. I'm still testing it to see how I like it, but it seems to be doing very well, and I just wanted something to prevent me from constantly reloading the web page to see prices every couple of minutes. And it does that. It's actually, I have the GitHub listed there, and it's very good for keeping real-time track. You can set it to update every 3 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds. And so, yeah, it's helpful. I got Repetier working with the Ender 3 V2. Works way better than when I first got the V2 and tried to set it up, and it didn't want to connect correctly. I did compile from source and do a direct install this time instead of using the app image, and that probably helped a little bit. Setting up prints is much easier now without the need for a micro SD card. As is bed leveling, much quicker and easier. I can just, go over and hit the button twice and it goes into the correct position. I still use Cura for slicing for two reasons. First, I can work on setting up the next print while the first print is going. And Cura is always much more up to date for slicing. Also got some glow-in-the-dark PLA that has turned out really good on 100% infill prints. Printed some glow-in-the-dark ghosts for around the house. I actually have one of them like right here if you're watching on YouTube. And I think it looks pretty cool. And the glow isn't the greatest, but it's still, kind of awesome. I also printed some PET G, and while I was able to get it to mostly work on some large prints, I really need to invest in an enclosure for it. I love the estimated time to completion being on my computer as well, and next I will have to get a decent webcam on the 3D printer and maybe set up some auto bed leveling. I attended a PTA meeting with the local school district, and I'm considering running for school board due to the overall amount of pure idiocy that is currently there. And I know everybody has heard my complaints about the independent school district around me. I don't know how this may affect my ability to podcast. I mean, I had to miss Wednesday's Linux Link Tech show in order to do it, but I'm hoping that it won't affect too much. I also got a Fitbit Versa 3 for free since someone was just giving it away. I was really kind of surprised that someone was just giving one away. It's a nice device, and the O2 sensing is nice, although I think it could be better. I like the Alexa integration on it. It works very well with almost no setup whatsoever on my part. I think it tracks workouts better than the Gear Watch S3 when it comes to like distance and heart rate, but it doesn't present the data as well as a Samsung app does. It definitely is not as classically stylish as the Gear, but I'm going to keep on using it for a while before I make my final decision on which one I'm going to keep using. And I have been up to a couple other things that I'd love to talk about, but I've kind of whinged on here for a little bit. So, Norbert, what have you been up to?
Sorry. Well, I took apart my microphone stand to clean it, and while I was there, I also took the opportunity to redesign it and rebuild it from source. And by source, I mean Lego bricks. Because if you grew up playing with Lego, you'll probably never be too old to have some it around. And sometimes I like to build something functional out of it. For example, a few years ago, I had a Sony Xperia phone, and it had a magnetic charging port on its side. That was supposed to connect to the bottom of a docking stand to be charged. And I didn't have one of those dogs, but what I did have was Lego bricks. So I ordered a USB cable that had that specific magnetic connector at the end of it, and I built a stand for the phone out of Lego bricks, and it fit surprisingly good. Because back in those days, because back then Sony was sticking to the very rectangular and phone design with sharp edges and sharp not sharp corners, but it was very rectangular, so it fit just right into the Lego stand. And I also took the cable that I ordered and I glued the end of it into the right spot in the stand. So when I would put the phone into the Lego stand, it would actually charge it. And I also have the aforementioned microphone stand. Now its second incarnation. I rebuilt it to make it more sturdy because sometimes it would just fall apart, not by itself, but for example, if I hit it too hard or something. And this rebuild of it ended up being a Han Solo edition. The reason for this is that I I built it out of black pieces, and I built it out of black pieces only to match the microphone's color. And I was looking for a very tall Lego piece to use it as reinforcement, but I could only find the one that has the carbonite frozen Han Solo printed on it, and it's now visible on the front of the microphone. So it's the Han Solo edition of my one in the. Oh, sorry. So it's the Han Solo edition of my microphone stand. I also like to visualize a few things. So, for example, I found a way to motivate myself in my university studies using Lego bricks. For each subject taken in a given semester, I have little pillars of Lego bricks, the height of which is based on how many credits the subject is worth. And I start building them on top of each other. So after passing a given exam, I would add the subject's pillar to the pillar of the semester. It's like a diagram, and I did have it on my. If you are watching the video, I did have it on my shelf. They look a bit something like this. This is, for example, last semester, and it's weird because a few years ago I even ended up buying more Lego because the ones that I had from my childhood didn't seem to be enough, because sometimes I would need a bunch of a particular color, a particular shape of brick, and things like that. I also built for my previous tablet one of another little stand that was actually adjustable using Technic pieces. So yeah, I really like to have functional stuff made out of Lego bricks.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. The building of a mic stand out of Lego pieces, or a tablet stand out of Lego pieces. Yeah, that's awesome.
It can be seen here.
Yeah.
And it here's the little Han Solo at the front.
I think when the Raspberry Pi first came out, there was loads of people built Raspberry Pi cases with Lego.
At one point, I tried to build a Lego case for an SSD, but I got worried whether if it would heat up too much, and I ended up abandoning the idea because the SSD would heat up and it would heat up the case itself. Speaking of university, though, I have some disappointing news for Leo. I'm not going to turn Jurassic Park into reality anytime soon, as in the end I didn't take the research topic related to working with ancient DNA. Instead, my master's thesis topic will be about a field I'm more familiar with, which is fungi, specifically related to the tree of life of all fungi, including all those that produce mushrooms, but also microbial ones as well. Because I've always been interested in fungi and mushrooms and stuff. Because in school you are taught that there are animals, plants, and fungi, and fungi seem to be this weird thing. And fungi seem to be at first these very weird alien things. Because when you're a child, you can't really understand what's a fungi. It's not a plant, it's not an animal. And some people used to think it was a plant a long time ago, but fungi are actually more closely related to animals than plants. And I'm also interested in phylogenetics, which basically tries to draw the tree of life for a given group of organisms, because a long time ago they would group animals and other organisms based on how they looked. For example, there are some worms, like flatworms and tapeworms and groundworms. Is groundworm a word, right? What are they called?
I think usually earthworms.
Yeah, sorry, earthworms. And later they actually discovered that a certain group of worms are actually more closely related to insects than other worms, because that's just it's sometimes it's just more because sometimes evolution has more to it than what meets the eye. So basically, there's a new study starting here regarding regarding the tree of life of fungi, and I got an opportunity to take part in it to a certain degree, and I can use it and I can use that opportunity to write my thesis. So in half a year, or so, I will probably be really close to having my master's degree. Speaking of things that are microscopic, I managed to contract the coronavirus around 4 weeks ago. So I was playing the try to avoid the coronavirus game, and I think I got around 14 months, not 14 months. Is it? I think I got. I think my highest score is now 19 months in that specific game. It's been around 2 weeks since I recovered, but my sense of smell is still relatively weak. It's slowly coming back. I live in a household with 3 other people, and despite all of us having been vaccinated with 2 shots, all of us lost our senses of smell and taste. Well, our sense of smell completely, and our sense of taste almost completely. Two of them have been vaccinated with Pfizer, and me and my brother have been vaccinated with Sputnik. So, and other than that, other than the less loss of smell and taste and some minor fever for me, uh, we we only had mild symptoms like that. So, which is probably thanks to the vaccines. But not being able to smell and taste anything is very frustrating, especially because I like to drink tea a lot, and mainly green tea, which I haven't really been able to smell or taste for a number of weeks. My takeaway of it is that the vaccines do work because none of us had serious symptoms at all, but also that the Delta variant of the virus is not a joke, because it was probably me who brought it home, and everyone else seemed to have, and I was the first one to produce symptoms, but after a few days, everyone else was starting to produce them around the same time. So it spreads really quickly. Yep. Does anyone have anything to add to that? Did any of you have had the virus?
No.
Do any of you think you had the virus?
Thankfully, my family has remained relatively isolated, but we have our reasons for that. With somebody that's immune compromised in the house, we've been extremely careful, and all of us but one of us have had both shots. So
Likewise, my daughter has Addison's disease, so we have to be very careful as well. She's immunocompromised, so we've also been careful, and thankfully nothing yet.
On the bright side of things, having had the virus might actually be the best way to get immunized for us.
some of the studies show that the vaccination is actually better than getting the virus and getting over it for longer term and better immunity. So, or at least that's
Yes,
what
but
I
we were,
read.
yes, but
It,
even though we were all vaccinated, we had all of us had 2 shots, and all 4 of us went down with the virus.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Um, after having recovered from the virus, I attended a local convention. Sorry. After having recovered from the virus, I attended a local convention, and if you were to ask me what the convention was about, the answer would be yes, because it's it's held 4 times a year, and it's mostly geared towards Japanese culture and other Asian media. But since it's the pretty much the only major convention of its type where I live, it's usually an amalgamation of and various fandoms of subcultures from Star Wars and Star Trek to anime. So everything except really gaming, because we have other gaming related events. The convention was nice, but it was even nicer to be able to go among people after weeks of isolation. And speaking of isolation and going back to about university a bit, it's very interesting because we do have in-person education at the university, but in some faculties of the university, they seem to be doing a sort of hybrid education where you can't go in to watch the lecture in person, but you can also watch it from home where it is streamed. And sometimes they would end up with having 2 or 3 students in there and dozens of watching from home, which is interesting. On the Linux side of things, I've been looking for a reliable distro for doing this show because of my experience with Arch-based distros when I wouldn't be able to mute my microphone. But then today I decided to install Fedora because it's stable and it also has Pipeware, which I want to use more. And I decided to double down on the vanilla GNOME experience. I want to see if I can use it without any extensions whatsoever. Because every time I install something with GNOME, I always just go for extensions. But if I was ever to recommend Fedora to a new user, it wouldn't be a good look if I were telling him or her about it. Wouldn't be a good look if I started telling them about how you have to customize it
Right.
to make it usable. So I want to see if it's usable out of the box because I never really tried to use GNOME without extensions. So I will have it on my laptop and I do have it on my tablet and I don't have any extensions on any of them. And I decided to install Fedora before the show, but I had some issues, so I had to abandon the installation. And right now I'm in the OS, and I set my mute key, and I decided to set it for another key. And surprisingly, it worked, so I can mute myself. I'm not sure what was the problem. I would set it to Super M, which it would tell me is mapped to something else. Do I want to remap it? I would say yes, and then I would press it, and it wouldn't mute anything. It would say it's muted, but it isn't. I'm not sure if it was if it had to do with Pipeware because I replaced Pipeware and it never. So I replaced Pulse Audio with Pipeware, but now I reinstalled Endeavor and I kept Pulse Audio, and it seems to be working. So I will be sticking with Pulse Audio on this show, but I do want to try Fedora with Pipeware because it's the future. Probably. And that's what I've been up to these 2 weeks. So, Tony, what have you been up to these 2 weeks?
Oh, well. So, as you may remember, I was on holiday when we recorded the last show. And I'd just like to apologise for the state of my audio. I was using my portable setup and I use a laptop, which I have to use a headset mic normally. I use a USB sound card so that I can get the audio through the headset and talk into the mic because it's only got a combined audio jack, and that particular headset has two 3.5 mil jacks on it, so you need the double input. But the one I took with me wasn't working, and I'd forgotten to take a backup or multiple backups that I normally do. Silly me. So I ended up having to use my earbuds so that I could listen to everyone else and use the internal mic on the laptop, which meant the audio was very distant and echoey. So apologies for that. But since getting home, I've been doing quite a bit of modelling, and I've posted a few more short videos of my restored models on my YouTube channel, and I've put a link to my channel in the show notes. So if you want to go and take a look, if you're interested, there's a link in the show notes on here. I'm getting more and more issues with my computer hardware at the moment. My PC tower's getting a bit long in the tooth. It's a third generation i7, so it's the best part of 8-9 years old, and it's starting to show its age. And I've been having a few issues for a while. So I went on the Entraware website. They're a Linux vendor here in the UK. But due to the current supply chain issues, the model that I want to buy is currently out of stock. And I'm not sure when it's going to become available again. So I'm checking the website on a regular basis, but nothing so far. I'm a bit averse to buying from another vendor because the advantage of buying from a Linux vendor is it's all going to be tested. They sell it pre-installed with either Ubuntu or Ubuntu Mate. So I'm assuming Mint Mate will run fine on it. If it runs Ubuntu Mate, it'll run Mint Mate, and everything should work okay. So, but if I go for another, unless I go for something expensive like a Dell corporate model or a Lenovo corporate model, that generally works pretty good with Linux, I might have issues. So hopefully I'm going to be able to buy from Entraware in the future, but we'll have to see how that goes. The other issue is that there's very few vendors that sell PCs without Windows pre-installed, and I would prefer not to pay the Windows tax for something that I'm not going to use. So it's that's where I'm at the moment. Not much else happening here at Common Edge Towers, so I'll pass over to you, Josh.
All right. Well, still in the middle of remodeling the main bathroom in my house. We're hoping it'll be finished by the end of the week. The place is a giant construction zone right now, but we're really pleased with how the work's turning out. And I wanted to give a shout out to good friend Carl, who's facilitating all of this, and some anonymous donors who actually helped us out a bit financially with it. As anyone knows, right now, material costs are through the roof. So it was really kind of a few people to step up and help us get this project started. So very thankful for that. Haven't had a lot of free time. We're in the middle of our overtime season at work, but being in the midst of the Halloween season, I took the time to binge watch Midnight Mass on Netflix, and it is written and directed by the brilliant filmmaker, in my opinion, Mike Flanagan, who also did The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor, also on Netflix. And I think this is his finest work to date. It's an old story. You've probably seen it a million times. I don't want to give away on the show, but it's retold from a fresh perspective, and it really it gives it new life. And yeah, I highly recommend it, but for mature audiences only. It's something to watch after you put the kids to bed. Um, so, also with Halloween in mind, I've been rewatching a few classic horror movies. I think I watched Children of the Corn yesterday, Stephen King classic, along with a few new ones, and playing some of the spookier albums in my music collection. Mostly a bunch of King Diamond records, as well as some other stuff sprinkled in, some black metal, and some of the darker side of the music spectrum.
Any Necrogoblicon?
I haven't got around to that one yet, Joe. I'll have to put that on
Or
the
Gwar?
list.
Love Gwar around
another
Halloween.
You bet. Gotta listen to a little Gwar. So, yeah, I'll have to add this to the list to get through before this evening's over.
Now,
So,
can you give the premise of Midnight Mass without giving too much away?
boy, it's difficult because it really revolves around a classic, I'll say a classic monster um, figure that has been used in millions of horror films, and it intermingles it with religion, but it does it in a very respectful manner. It doesn't really push an agenda too hard one way or the other. I think it's very balanced in its approach, and yeah, it's just fantastically done. I'd say more, but I really think I'd probably give away a little too much.
Okay.
So yeah, that's about all I've been up to.
Okay, then.
Before moving to the innards, just like to say, myself and Joe are celebrating our third anniversary on the show. I'm here
Good job, guys.
4.
Excellent.
So yeah, quite cool. That never thought I'd be doing a podcast for 3 years straight, So
It doesn't feel like
not
3
that I've
years.
been on every episode, but Joe has since
Yeah.
we started.
It still feels like we started last week.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
quite a few episodes to be in there for.
yeah, well, I know I'm over Joe's number or Joe Rez's number now, and got Leo beat now, and I'll never beat Rob's numbers, but I might try.
Who knows?
All right, on to the Linux innards. This week in the Linux innards, we wanted to discuss the apps that we use. And for myself, I wanted to talk about the ones that are on all of my machines. Like, I set up a new machine, these are the apps I put on because I'm going to use them. And the first one I picked is actually kind of an odd one to be on all my machines, but yeah, it turned out I put it on all. So, and that's Cura. Now, Cura is a slicing software for 3D printers, and it runs from an app image. Now, I know, I think you can also get it in a flat pack, maybe, but I'm not certain on that one. It makes the setup very simple, and it's pretty easy to customize it if you need, and you can save all your settings and everything like that in an external file, and then load it in when they provide a new one. Strangely, I use this very often, a lot of times just to see how I can tweak a print to make it faster, or to see how the items I sometimes design with Tinkercad, which uses Autodesk. So I think I'm going to install Autodesk and see how that works. And we'll print and what angle to set them at for them to print best with. I can't really think of anything negative to say about this application, but I haven't really tried out any other slicing application to make a comparison, though, except for Repetier's built-in slicer, which is usually just an older version of Cura. So updates do come down, and they always seem to be an improvement, even if only an incremental improvement. I used this yesterday to test out a design that I had made to add a table to my new chair that I'm working on fixing. It's not a complex design, but it is somewhat large and requires a lot of tweaking of settings in order to get the print time down. Like when I first set up the print, it was a 27-hour print. I got the print time down to 14 and a half hours. And that's just the first print of this adapter. I'm thinking I'm going to have to make it like 10 millimeters shorter on the top, 10 millimeters shorter on the bottom, and then see how it works. It's made to fit in the cup holder that's on the chair, and to have two holes in the top so that I can mount a table to that, and that will allow it to swivel. Next show I'll probably talk more about that in my bi-weekly wanderings, because I did a lot of work to get that chair working correctly, and I like it. I think it's a really nice chair. The next application that I use on all my machines is Standard Notes. I know someone had mentioned Standard Notes in the Discord as well, that they had started using it, the flat pack version of that. Now, I use the app image for this as well. Yes, all the information that I type out is stored on other people's servers, but the encryption doesn't allow for anyone without the password to read it. They don't have the encryption keys on their end. So I can do everything and be fairly certain it's secure as long as no one has my password. Now, it automatically syncs changes between all my devices, and it's great for journaling and lists. It's not as full-featured as something like Evernote, but it is free and generally very stable. I can only think of like one day where I wasn't able to access it for whatever reason. I back up all of my scripting that I do there as well, and also put my Docker commands that I use regularly. And I make a copy of my FS tab and keep it there in case my main computer is non-recoverable and I need to rebuild it from scratch, I have that FS tab there, and then all my scripting that I have there will work the way that I expect it to because everything is in the exact same locations. I've also used it to write a few articles that I've written in the past, and it quickly and easily allows me to switch between devices and continue right where I left off. I absolutely love that feature. I'll be working on something out in the garage on the machine out there, and then I'll come inside to sit with the family, and I'll sit at this computer here and open up my standard notes and just continue on from right where I was at. And then if I go back out there, all the changes I made are ready to go. And then
So,
Go-
Joe, is Standard Notes kind of cloud-based and desktop-based note application?
yeah. It is desktop based, but it gets backed up to the cloud,
Right.
someone else's computer, essentially.
Yeah.
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 So even if all of my machines were turned off and I loaded up on a new machine, I would still be able to pull down all of my stuff.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And then the third application that I picked is Resilio Sync. And yeah, all my machines have Resilio Sync on it. I've discussed Resilio Sync several times before on the show. If you've listened to the show, you've probably heard me talk about it. I use it to sync files across all of my machines, and I use it for scripting actions when paired with cron. I use cron as a file watcher, and if I add the file on one machine, it syncs it to my server, and then cron looks for it and does specific actions based on either what's in the file or simply the file being there. I also use it on my phone so that I can drop my audiobooks into a folder on my PC, and then it will automatically sync with my phone. Also use it to delete those same files when I'm done listening. I will also add several nodes so that the addition of books happens much faster. The more nodes you have, the quicker it will saturate your connection to your phone, and the quicker it will, transfer the files onto it. I also use it in conjunction with Cura as well, so that I can set up a print from whatever machine I'm on and then have it available instantly on the machine with Repetya. So then I just go to the Repetya machine or, use the desktop from there using X2Go and launch the print that way. And I also use it for the standard things that everybody else would use something like that for, which is backing up specific files. Like all the pictures that I take with my phone automatically get backed up to a couple of different PCs. If I want something to specifically be available on all my machines, then I have a specific folder that I can drop it into, and it will be available on any machine that I have turned on. And as soon as I turn on the machines that aren't turned on, it's going to very quickly be on there and available as well. And as for the browser I use Chrome, and I'm kind of, stuck in the environment with Chrome. I have given Firefox a try. Firefox was my main browser in the distant past, but I'm just very, very in the Google ecosystem at this point and kind of locked into Chrome. Not really planning on trying to get away from it at this point. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. Tony?
Yeah, so like you, Joe, all these things are on all of my PCs when I do an install. So I'll start off with my browser because it's the first thing I tend to go and set up, and that's Firefox. I've really got to like the fact that you can have a Firefox account, and then once you've got that up and running, everything else comes back. So because it backs everything up, onto someone else's computer in the cloud, but it remembers all your accounts and stuff. So yeah, I really like that. I've got to admit, Firefox does have a few issues, and one of them is it doesn't necessarily play very well with some of the video conferencing software. One particular one, which is Jitsi, I use for my lug, doesn't seem to like Firefox, and it does advise you it works better in Chrome. So I've got Chromium as a backup for when I'm using Jitsi, but most of the time it's Firefox, and that's always on all the computers I use. So the other things that I install on every PC, or make sure are installed on every PC, because some of them come as standard and others you have to actually install. The first one is GIMP, the GNOME Image Manipulation Program, to give it its full title.
It's GNU.
I do quite a lot of image editing, not really powerful image editing, fairly easy stuff to do, but the GIMP gives me the tools that I need to do it. Because I've started doing a lot of modeling, and some of the models require decals on them. I've started making my own decals, which is one of the reasons I bought the colour laser printer, so I could print my own decals out, which are water slide transfers for anyone who's not sure what they are. So you can use them for other things. It's not just for modelling. People use them for putting images on ceramics and all sorts of stuff, making their own artwork and things. But modelers use them for making things to put the artwork onto both plastic and die-cast models. So quite often I'll start off with a very poor image, and I'll put it into GIMP and play around with it to kind of clean it up. And then once I've exported that as a high quality image, I then go on to my next piece of software, which is Inkscape. But before we just to say, one of the things I don't like about GIMP is the fact that some of the ways it saves the changes you've made aren't necessarily as easy to go back. It is starting to get better with layers and things like that, that you can reverse things through layers, but it's not as good as things like Photoshop and stuff like that with that. But it is starting to get better, and that applies to one of my other packages that I'll talk about in a minute. But anyway, once I've got an image, I'll transfer that into Inkscape, and because Inkscape's a vector graphics rather than pixel graphics. It's very good at resizing things and maintaining the quality without getting hazy when you're reducing the size of an image. So if you start off with a high quality image and you reduce its size, it can maintain the quality of the image even on a very small object. So I use Inkscape for that, and then I create a little .png image of several of the decals, and export that for importing into a word processor for finally printing them out. And that's really, it's really good. I like Inkscape as well, because if you've got things that need text, you can actually create text and things like that in it as well. So I have actually created my own decals in Inkscape from scratch, without an original image to go from, and that gives really good results. And then finally, as a podcaster, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Audacity. There are other audio editors available for Linux, but I've been using Audacity now for best part of 10 years, I think. And I've got used to its workflow. It's, it has its issues. One of them is that it doesn't layer the audio changes you make. So it's very, without destroying all the edits, all the changes you've made, you can't go back to say something you did 10 edits ago without reversing all the other stuff that you've done since then. Whereas if it was layered changes, you'd be able to go to that layer with that change and just play around with that and then keep the other changes. So I do believe there is some talk about them implementing that in the future, but at the moment that isn't something it can do. But apart from that, it is a very good audio editor. And I do know there's a lot of people use it for fairly powerful stuff. It's very good at multi-tracking and editing multi-tracks, which obviously we're using it for multi-track editing because we all record our own track in Audacity. And then whoever's doing the edit imports it into a single Audacity instance, and then we edit the show and then merge it down to one track. So I couldn't edit the show without Audacity. I do know when Owen was editing the show, he was using another program, but I haven't got into that. So, but that's what I use. I use lots of other pieces of software that are installed on all my machines. But if I started going into them, we'd be here all night. So I'm going to give Norbert a chance to talk about what he uses.
Well, for around 10 years, I've been using Google Chrome on Windows. Then I moved to Linux and I realized, well, there's not really a point in me installing Linux onto Manjaro and Ubuntu and anything else if it has Chromium. Then I was happy with Chromium for a couple of months. Then the thing happened when they would take away the Google account sign-in from Chromium and essentially every Chromium-based browser other than Chrome. And I really need and I really like to have bookmark syncing in a browser. So I decided to move to Brave. And I've been using Brave for a couple of months now, and I've been really satisfied with it, because the sad thing about today's internet is most things really do only work properly in a Chromium-based browser. So if we were doing this show 2 days ago, I would say Brave, because Brave is, in my opinion, it's really close to Chrome, but it's entirely open source. So if we were doing the show 2 days ago, I would have said Brave is my go-to browser, but I decided to start browser hopping yesterday, and because I always had Firefox around as a backup browser, and I sort of have a 3-browser, not layout. What's the word? And I also sometimes use LibreWolf, which is a Firefox-based browser that is very privacy focused. So whenever I wanted to whenever I wanted to be signed into something, for example, my Google account, because I too heavily rely on Google's ecosystem, because I'm too deep in Google's ecosystem, and I don't really plan to try and move away from it either, other than moving away from Chrome. So whenever I want to log into something, I will use Brave. And whenever I want to do some search that I don't need to be logged into, I would either use Firefox or LibreWolf. But I'm trying to use Firefox as my daily driver browser. And in a way, it feels good to realize that I'm trying to move away from the Chromium base. I know in the grand scheme of things, I'm just one person out of the many millions using a browser, but it feels good. So other than the browser, I had a bit of a difficulty trying to write my list, because I don't really have many things other than the browser that I have on all of my machines. Because so I decided to write down stuff that I use a lot regardless of what I'm on. So my number one would be LibreOffice, because the two main things that would me keep you, because the two main things that would keep, because the two main things that would still keep me on Windows are the Adobe Suite and the Microsoft Office. But at one point I realized that I stopped using Microsoft Office for anything, and I would just go with LibreOffice all the time. And ever since I realized that in LibreOffice there is a built-in UI layout selector, where you can essentially switch to the tab layout, click apply, and it would turn the layout from the global menu into the ribbon style that Microsoft Office has, and it really feels. And I started to feel really at home with LibreOffice, and then I started to do more customization. For example, switching the icon. For example, switching the icon themes, and it really looks, and it started looking really well. Sorry. And it started looking really good with the GTK compatibility installed. So I think for the past 3 or 4 months, I haven't even used Microsoft Office for anything that I couldn't have done, because for anything significant, because I just could do anything in LibreOffice. And my other two are sort of related. It's Audacity and OBS, because I would do some video production, and for the recording part at least, I've moved completely to Linux. To Void Linux, which has been my daily driver distro for around 4 months now, and I had some issues with audio. Audacity wouldn't recognize my microphone. The system would, but Audacity wouldn't record it. Then I switched from Pulse Audio to Pipewire, and the problems just went away. So at least for for audio and video recording, desktop video recording, I've been using these two, and I've been using Audacity on Windows for maybe 10 years. So even before moving to Linux, I've been using Audacity even on Windows for around 10 years, but I never really did any audio editing, which I want to try to change. So if you're listening to the edited version on your podcast application of this episode, it probably will have been edited by me, and I want to try to get better at audio editing, because I would mostly do video editing, which brings me to how I cheated a little, and I have come up with 2 separate lists, because I have a list of stuff that I use on Windows that is not available on Linux. And since I've eliminated Microsoft Office from the equation, it's a very simple list. It's basically Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Premiere Pro, and Adobe Illustrator. And that's at this point those three things. So the Adobe Suite is the only thing that's keeping me on Windows. And I'm not sure if I want to try to move away from it, for at least not in the near future, because I've been using them for, I think, more than 9 years, so almost 10 years. And I've really gotten into the workflow of especially Photoshop and Premiere Pro. And I'm pretty sure there are a number of things. For example, I would sometimes do weird keyframe editing for animation that I know I really should be doing in After Effects, but I never really gotten around to learn After Effects. So I should probably give a fair chance for Kden Live. I've tried DaVinci Resolve before on Windows, but in a weird way, I'm actually sort of okay with having to use the Adobe Suite. I would be really happy if they ported it to Linux, of course, but I'm not really mad, and I don't really feel bad for having to use Windows.
You shouldn't feel bad for having to use Windows.
I recently came up with the philosophy that Linux is my friend and Windows is my colleague. So, and that's my relationship with Windows. It's pretty neutral. It's just a means for an end. And I would use Windows before Mac OS any day. I don't really like the feel of Mac OS.
Josh, how about you?
Well, for my browser, I'm a longtime Firefox user, and it remains my primary on the desktop. Um, I find the multi-account container add-on to be a must-have. Just can't live without that. I love the way it segregates everything. It keeps it all separated, and the privacy features are also very robust still. I know that Mozilla as a company kind of puts their foot in their mouth quite a bit, and we're pretty harsh on them in the community, but I still think Firefox is an excellent browser. I'm also very familiar with it as a longtime user of it. So, yeah, that remains my primary, and then I have Brave and Vivaldi as my backup browsers. I use Brave a little more than Vivaldi, but I'm trying to use Vivaldi a little more. There's just a lot of options. I call like the KDE of browsers. There's tons of stuff to unpack in that thing, so I probably should play with it a little more when I have some time. And my next one is as a person that is almost always listening to music and also has a fairly substantial catalog. Good music players a must. So there's a lot of excellent options on Linux. I've used a bunch, but here on my main Mint system, I've settled on Lollipop as my player of choice. It's got a modern and slick UI. It handles large collections well, and it has enough options in it to satisfy most. It's not completely stripped down. It's GTK based, so it integrates nicely into Cinnamon. Of course, it's really designed for the GNOME desktop. It's got the hamburger menus and whatnot, but it looks fine here. And yeah, I really enjoy it as a player. And piggybacking off of that, my second one was EasyTag to manage audio file metadata. And yeah, it pretty much does what it says on the tin. It's straightforward to use and also GTK based. And let's see here. For my last pick, I went with SyncThing. And I use it for an admittedly slightly convoluted way to back up files across various PCs in my house. So I go from my main Mint drive here in my PC. I sync to both the media PC in my front room and to my laptop. And then I use the laptop to sync back to my Debian drive in this CD or PC, excuse me. It's probably not the most efficient way of doing things, but after the initial sync, everything's pretty quick and easy, and of course, completely automated. And I wanted to give a couple quick mentions to GNU Cache that I use for personal finance management. It's very simple to use. Hypnotics for IPTV entertainment. It's actually been a lot more useful to me than I thought it'd be. A lot of classic television and movies on there that I really enjoy. And the web apps app that Mint put in here for conveniently launching of web pages as apps. It's actually become quite useful for me. I've really enjoyed playing around with that and making it straightforward to launch the web pages I use the most. And yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, I actually started using the Coinbase web app as well as that ticker that I use. So yeah, it does make things really convenient. Okay, and I think that's everything for the innards. That was a fairly surprisingly quick innards.
We could have gone on for hours and hours if we'd have talked about all the software we use.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Well, if we are allowed to do quick shoutouts to other software we use, then I would also like to have some honorable mentions that didn't quite make it to my list. Like I said, the list of apps I use on my devices is very considerably. So, for example, on my tablet, I don't have LibreOffice at all, where I've been using MPV for consuming videos. Then I realized I should probably learn how to use it more, because when there would be a video that I need to crop to fit the screen, I would just go back to VLC.
Yeah. Now VLC is basically on all my machines as well, so that's really what I use for audio on my computer and video on my computer. The
Yeah, that's my
randomize,
choice as well.
yeah, the randomize function on there is the best that I've found so far. It's actually different every time you randomize. So, and then like, honorable mention, definitely Belina Etcher, Arduino IDE, Caliber. I could, go on. Gparted ends up on all
Yes,
my
Gparted
machines.
is the best friend of any distro hopper.
Oh yeah.
Second best friend after Ventoy.
Yeah, that is absolutely a must-have.
And discs. I don't know if you guys use discs.
All the time.
Absolutely.
I can't understand why they take once you've installed Mint, Gparted disappears,
Yeah, it is annoying.
and you have to reinstall it.
You know, Tony, they do leave discs on there, so maybe they think it's a bit redundant. But of course, disc isn't anywhere near as powerful as Gparted.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
I use
that
might be
Gparted
there.
all the time.
It also doesn't require permissions to start up, and it's a lot lighter because it does a lot less. So yeah, it definitely has its uses.
Well, Arch is probably the worst offender of things that Arch is probably the worst offender of having things disappear, because when you boot up the Arch Live ISO, I have everything that I need to connect to Wi-Fi, for example. But if you do pacstrap and then install the base package group, well, it isn't in the base package group, which kind of makes sense. But then again, it also makes sense that you would have to add each package manually. So it isn't really a bad offender after all. It's just that's where I learned the hard way, that sometimes what's in the live environment not necessarily will be in the installation afterwards.
Yeah, and another one that's on most of my machines, not all, but most, is surprisingly DroidCam. And extremely useful because my phone has a much better camera than any of my ancient webcams. I'm not using it right now. I'm using an ancient webcam. But it is helpful. It does work pretty well. The only problem with it is every time I have a kernel update, I have to redo the mod probe, reload the drivers for the loopback, and that does get annoying, which is why it's not on my list of favorites.
Does that have a GUI interface with it, Joe, or is that just command line?
There is a command line interface to connect, but you're going to end up having to do a lot from command line because, you're going to have to do the reinstalling of the drivers in order to make it work, to get the loop back working again. But it's the same. It's the same with OBS. If I want to use OBS as a webcam, so I could change my output that's going to Discord right now by using OBS as a webcam, but I would have to go to the command line and reset up the loopback for it. And it's a much easier way to, say, share your desktop. Or a more robust way, I should say, as opposed to easier. Okay. Let's call it finished for the innards and move on to vibrations from the ether. And this will be a quick vibrations from the ether because we only got one email. I guess it's just that time of year. And this one is from Alfred. Hey guys, thanks for the podcast. Enjoying it quite a lot. As you can see from my email, I live in the Microsoft world. Exploring Linux as an option to Windows 11. The biggest hurdle so far is the integration of cloud services, OneDrive, G Drive, into Linux. There doesn't seem to be a clean and elegant way of doing this, especially for a noob. Some distros need command line voodoo, and all don't handle offline placeholders as cleanly as Windows. Would be a great podcast topic. I did respond to this, and I'll get to my response in just a second. I kind of want to expand on it. Actually, let me read the response, and then I'll expand on it. So my response was, I agree. It's difficult on Linux and ever-changing. Someone comes up with a new way to fuse mount all the different services, and then the services brick them. I gave up on it a while ago. And I did. This was one of my favorite things to do for a while, was to set up a mount so that I could basically have all of these different cloud storage things mounted locally, which was really the only way to do it at the time, to integrate it with Linux. And it would work, and it would work for a month or two, and then the various companies, because they didn't want people to be able to use it that way, would just find a way to brick it. And then it would be another month or so, and someone would find another way around what they had bricked and would make it work again. It got to be annoying. I could never count on whether or not I'd be able to access these cloud services the way that I wanted to, or if I'd have to just go back to using their website. In the end, I got rid of most of my cloud services. I no longer use Dropbox. I still have it. It's very minimal. I use it to back up a couple of things, like my resume and things that I don't really care about, but I still need. I still need that extra backup of my resume just in case. I no longer use. I had like a terabyte on Amazon. I no longer have that. Asus, I no longer use theirs. I had theirs for a while. Because they gave me a whole bunch of free stuff, and if I could still access it the way I wanted to, then maybe things would be different, and I would have, paid for it and kept it. But yeah, it's extremely difficult to do on Linux. If anybody knows of a way that is stable, please email us, let us know. Go ahead.
Well, for the GNOME/Budgie ecosystem, there sometimes, usually when you set up a distro with GNOME, there's that setup screen when it would ask you if you want to log into any of your cloud accounts. And one day I just got curious. I logged into my Google account, and in Nautilus, or even if I switched the file managers in Thunder, it was also there. At the left panel, below the drives, my Google Drive would appear as a network drive. It wouldn't sync locally, but I would be able to access my files. And I'm pretty sure you can also open files, edit them, and it would upload them. I had some issues with that. I think I tried editing something with LibreOffice, but if you just want to access your files, it's a half-decent option for it.
Okay, and now what was that again?
It's just built into GNOME.
Okay.
If you go to
I
the
believe
GNOME...
Cinnamon has that as well.
Yeah.
I think it has... you can log into your services.
Yeah,
I haven't ever done it, though.
Actually, I'm not really sure about Budgie, but since Budgie also has the GNOME Control Center where you have to set it up, I would assume that it would also work on Budgie, but it certainly works on GNOME.
Okay, so if anybody else has any stable methods, easy methods to set up, absolutely.
I know there are some paid ones for Google Drive, but I don't know their names.
Yeah, there were a couple of paid ones when I was looking around, but I was definitely looking for the free options. There are some services that will act as a bridge that you pay X amount a month for, and it will allow you to set up all these different things as Fuse. But I'm sure that they have the same issues where they have to go through and do an update every couple of months because the method they use got bricked.
What I would do in a bit of a workaround way is, since I'm dual booting Windows with Linux, I have my Google Drive synced locally on Windows, and I have that same drive mounted on Linux. So whenever I need something from my Google Drive, I would just edit or open the local files, and it wouldn't sync that way. But whenever I would boot into Windows later that day or the next day, it would just sync.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
No, I used to have a really ugly workaround because you could do a lot of it in Windows. I would have one machine set up with Windows, and then basically it would run headless over in the corner, and I would completely ignore it, and then I would use Resilio Sync or something similar to that. I think it was BT Sync at the time, which is Resilio Sync now, and sync that to one of my Linux machines. And then any changes I made on the Linux machine would automatically go to the Windows machine, and then that would automatically update the cloud services. But that is just way too dirty of a way to do it.
It's a sync of a sync.
Yeah.
Syncception, if you will.
When you thought you couldn't sink deeper.
Yeah, it was a nasty way to do it. And that is it for our vibrations from the ether. Let's move on to check this out. Now, we have 2 items in check this out. Does anybody want to take the first one, Chicago 95?
Yeah, I was the one to put it in there because I mentioned I want to try specific theming on XFCE, and I found Chicago 95, which is a complete classical Windows theming from GTK theming and the window manager icons, and I think even it has even a Windows 95 theme for the XFCE notification pop-up bubble. So it's supposed to be the best and most thorough classical Windows theme for XFCE, and I got a bit nostalgic because my very first PC I owned was a laptop running Windows 98, which almost looks the same as Windows 95. So I decided I should do some nostalgia. And when I said I want to try MX Linux 21, which has XFCE, this is a good opportunity to try both.
Yeah.
And if anyone likes the classical Windows 95 look of and feel, I would recommend looking at this because I've already installed it once on my desktop to try it out, and it was pretty convincing. It even has the fonts, even the terminal fonts from Windows. So I want to do the conversion of XFCE on my laptop.
Yeah, I mean, this definitely looks exactly like classic Windows, and that is, at least cool. And the other one is a Raspberry Pi imager.
I put this one in. This is the Raspberry Pi Imager app. We may have talked about this on the show in the past, I'm not sure. But these Raspberry Pi have got an imager app that you can download for Windows, Mac, and Linux. They call it an Ubuntu install, but it's a Deb, so I would imagine any Deb-based operating system should be able to run it. Well, Linux Mint does because I installed it.
Yep.
But basically, this is a way of burning any SD card of any of the images that are available through Raspberry Pi. And if you haven't got them on your system, you get the option to download them while you're trying to install them to the card. So if you've not seen this before, go and check it out. It's quite a nice, cool little application.
Yeah, I don't think I talked about it, but this is one of the tools that I used when we had our Raspberry Pi episode where I was covering multi-boot and different ways to set it up. But yeah, it was a great way to get all the different approved Raspberry Pi images.
Yeah, I just thought, considering that we just talked about the new Raspberry Pi 02W, that it might be a good time to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Is anybody going to get one of the 02Ws?
Nah, probably not.
Well, for $15, I don't know. That's a pretty good price, but that RAM seems like a real limiting factor.
It's $15.
For me, it's just the fact that it'll sit there in the cupboard and I'll probably never use it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's $15 if you're able to walk into a micro center.
Yeah, you asked the wrong question. The question would be how many of these one would get.
Well,
Mhm.
that's yeah. I'll probably end up with a couple sooner or later, but yeah, it's like I was saying, it's only $15 if you can walk it into a store and purchase it there. Otherwise, your shipping fees are going to be almost equal to the price of the device anyway.
Yeah, it depends where you are. Over in the UK, I think shipping from the major suppliers over here would be £2 or £3, and you can pick one up for about 13.50
Yeah,
UK.
that's not bad at all. But
Yeah.
here, most of your sellers are going to be charging quite a lot for shipping on these devices.
I'm too afraid to look at the shipping fees for Central Europe.
So, Joe, you're not going to be building a Pi Zero cluster anytime soon.
Not big on the whole building a cluster thing, but I definitely want to get one and try and build a handheld out of it.
Yeah, I think it's a good price point for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of videos already online about building handhelds for the Raspberry Pi Zero. I'm not sure whether they. I think one of them's going to be doing a video on the Zero 2W. So
Yeah, there's
if you
also
wait for a couple of weeks, you might get one with the latest stuff on it.
it's always the screen that holds me back. The price and the shipping on a good quality 7-inch touch screen kind of holds me back from actually doing the project myself. And now you can also find projects where people will remove all of the pieces that stick up on like a Pi 4 and then build a handheld out of that. So yeah, it's cool to watch, but just, uh,
I have seen little Nintendo. What were they called? The Nintendo Lite or something? The ones with the little 2.5-inch, 3-inch screen on them.
oh
Made using the Raspberry Pi Zero for that.
the Game Boy Micro.
Probably, yeah. I'm not into gaming myself, but there's some cool videos of making really small games consoles with the smaller screen, 2 or 3 inch screen, and they're probably more affordable.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, that's it for check this out. Unless anybody's got anything else to add.
Before we go, I just wanted to say that if anyone listens to Linux User Space and catches Leo over there, him and Dan gave us a shout last week on their podcast, and I just wanted to return the favor and say if you haven't gone over there to check out Linux User Space, definitely give it a listen. It's a fantastic show, and we appreciate them giving us a shout on their podcast.
Yeah,
Cool.
thanks, Leo. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, on to the announcements. Our next episode will be at 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on the 14th of November. Get mintCast converted to your time zone. We have that link in the show notes. And our next live stream will be 2 p.m. U.S. Central Time on the 6th of November. Hopefully, if everything goes well, nothing breaks. And we also have the link to convert that to your time zone, which will be interesting over the next week or two as things change.
It's already interesting because we had our clocks set back 1 hour this morning.
Right.
I mean, last night.
Ours
Yeah, it's
should
a
happen next
relatively
week.
social time here in the UK.
Oh,
of
don't
coming
worry.
up to 9 o'clock.
We'll break that come next week.
Yeah.
And then all of us have to, all of us that watch have to also make time to be able to get Doctor Who in on the same day.
Yeah.
Okay, and on to our wrap up. I'm Joe, and if you want to get a hold of me, you can catch me on a couple of the other podcasts that I'm on. That's the Linux Link Tech Show, which I missed last week. That's tllts.org. I'm also on the Linux Lugcast, linuxlugcast.com. We just had a Halloween special on Friday. You can find me on MeWe. You can send me an email directly, jb@mintcast.org. And I also have a Ko-fi link where you can buy me a coffee if you want to. And then, Tony, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can find me at some of my old shows on Hacker Public Radio. I'm host ID 338 if you want to go over there and check me out. I'm on Twitter, TonyH1212, and I did look at it this week. I'm very bad at checking my social media. I'm th@mintcast.org. I'm on distrohoppersdigest@gmail.com, and we're recording again next week, so look out for that episode towards the end of the week. And if you want to, go and check out my YouTube channel. I've put a link in the wrap up for my YouTube channel, as well as in the in the weekly wanderings. So yeah, check out that if you want to. And Norbert, what about you?
Well, you can send me an email at norbert@mintcast.org, and for now that's all. I'm still contemplating making a YouTube channel in English, whenever that might happen in the future. For example, if you're maybe from next year, it might be a thing.
And
All
then
right, and if you-
the other Josh, where can we find you?
yeah, you can find me at jt@mintcast.org, Josh Thacker on Discord, and at metal_foss on Twitter.
And then Nishant, who wasn't able to make the show this week, you can catch him at nishant@mintcast.org. Rycon Ghost on Instagram, Rycon Ghost at GitHub, Ghost Rycon on Discord, Maverick00783 at Steam. Before we leave, we want to make sure to acknowledge some of the people who make mintCast possible. Owen Peary for our audio editing, although I think Norbert will be doing the audio editing coming up. Josh Lowe for all his work on the website. Hobstar for our logo. InitRD for the animated Discord logo. And Londoner for our time sync. Bytemart Hosting for hosting mintcast.org and our backup Mumble server. Archive.org for hosting our audio files. The Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Clem.
Clem. And Co.
Yay, it's a wrap. Less than 2 hours.
That's
All right.
impressive.
Yeah, we burned
And
through
with
that.
my tight editing, it should be around 50. It might actually be around under 50 minutes each, the two parts.
Yeah,
We'll see.
even with my long bi-weekly wanderings this time, and I could have made it longer, I really wanted to talk about that chair, as cheesy as that sounds.
All right, stopping Audacity then.
Yeah, I already stopped
Yeah.
mine. 373 exporting audio.
Save.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty clean in and out. Not bad.
Yeah, it's good. Like I say, it's quite social now. It's coming up 9 p.m. here.
I don't know. You look at Tony. You might actually get some sleep tonight.
Well, it's not like my body has adjusted in this one day, so
Nah, it's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
The sooner they abolish all this summertime and wintertime and all that.
Okay, well, I think I'm going to stop the stream
Cool.
and stream. I know we do usually do some talking there, but